Thank you. And now I might get back in and speak to the IGCP and the INMO. I remember having a conversation one time with my uncle, who happens to be a priest, and we discussed what's the best way to die. And he said, death is never easy. It doesn't matter what road you take, death is never easy. So my questions now today, I suppose the roadmap which you've laid out, the Irish College of General Practitioners, and the engagement that you've had with your members, you've obviously outlined the various forums that you've had, and the questionnaires and the surveys that you've taken place. And that obviously is not a very large amount of people that you've surveyed. Out of your 4,500 members, 100 people have engaged with on that particular survey. So it really is a very minimum engagement, I would say, with your GPs on that. Just in relation to that, so what steps can be taken to ensure that palliative care provisions are not negatively impacted if assisted suicide is legislated for? And I don't think we should assume that that any future assisted suicide services would be GP-led. I'm not aware of any studies that have been undertaken in here in Ireland to ascertain what portion of the GPs would be willing to provide this service should it be legislated. Can you comment on that? In relation to the INMO, have you conducted surveys? Sorry, I don't know why I didn't get your testimony or your earlier, but I didn't get it. Have you conducted surveys within the organisation on this issue, and what were those figures? And the nurses and the midwives, they're very much the first point of contact, patients making requests about assisted suicide, and how would they be trained to deal with clinical situations that could be difficult, and it's not, it's not impossible to overcome, the significant difficulty that can exist with existing illness prognosis, i.e. predicting how long that somebody might live, whether it could be weeks, months, years. So in many cases that would really be impossible to give advice on. Also the risks of coercion, given the suboptimal availability of social work supports. That's also an issue. And identifying the suicidal patients presenting with a request for assisted suicide, but not acknowledging feeling suicidal. So, I see what's happening in Canada at the moment, that slippery slope that started back in 2016, and how now that is being considered for people with mental health issues. So if you could address those couple of issues, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
To the Chair,
GPs first.
Yeah, I might just address the first question, which is about the survey. And again, I suppose just to reiterate, and we have mentioned it before, that was just one part of a very lengthy process.
I understand.
And for example,
yes.
the articles and forum, the ethical articles and forum goes to 4,500 members. So this is a journey, for want of a better word, and that was just one part of the process of engagement. Dermot.
Thank you very much for raising the issue of palliative care, and we would feel it is very important that access to high quality palliative care be available to all patients in an equitable fashion right across the country. And we need to support access to palliative care in general practice and specialist hospital care teams. So I think we are on the same page there. There is no legislation yet as to around assisted dying. So I think we cannot make any assumptions if legislation were written as to where that might be delivered. So
we go to the INMO.
Just very briefly, Chair, our submission is not based on surveys. We obviously have discussed this issue with our Executive Council, which are a large group of nurses and midwives who are all practising, who are all talking to their colleagues, and the diversity of the views is clear from that, and we're not trying to, nor have we represented a particular. We're taking a fairly Jesuitical approach of it, that there's both ends of the spectrum and in between. But the specific other issues you raised, training, yes, I'm sorry you don't have our submission available to you, Senator, but we have particularly identified the requirement for training and support for nurses and midwives around the conducting of difficult conversations and the follow-ons for those circumstances. the ubiquity of those, or whether it would have to be more focused on different services, that would depend on what the legislative change was and where provision was made for certain services. And certainly I absolutely agree with you that there would be a requirement for training in those areas. On the issue of coercion, one of the things that is in the mind of nurses and midwives, no doubt, the same as it's in the minds of the public more generally, is the need to avoid coercive circumstances. And in particular, we have identified the absolute necessity, and this is clear in the nursing literature. It has caused both difficulty for service provision, if you were on that side of it, but also very serious moral distress for professionals, where there has not been a failure at the legislative stage to deal adequately with advanced healthcare directives and whatever form of assisted decision making exists. And there have been, for example, paradoxical situations where you've had particular interventions at particular times which weren't expected. But there has to be, from a coercion point of view, that has to be there. But there are also other safeguards that need to be there as well. And the suicidality piece, I'm not sure I can make a contribution on that. That's a matter of professional practice that would have to be engaged with on a case-by-case basis. I'm not sure I could offer a particularly helpful reflection on that issue, Senator.
Thank you, Mr.